Check out our streaming schedule for this week. We stream every single day on this channel, talking about all things sports history. And now with college basketball season really getting in the swing of things, we are doing a lot of college basketball streams, commentating the action as we get one step closer to March Madness. So join me every night as we call the best of college basketball. And now, on with our feature presentation. I think we can all agree that Jimmy Johnson is an absolute legend in so many ways. Not only is he one of the greatest coaches in the history of the NFL, winning 2 Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowboys, being a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and spearheading one of the most iconic dynasties in NFL history, but he has been a legend with Fox Sports for nearly 3 decades. Outside of his 4-year stint with the Miami Dolphins, Johnson has practically been with Fox the entire time that they broadcast NFL games from 1994 on. He's injected a sense of humor and insight into the pregame show for years, and his chemistry with his partners cannot be understated. People love Jimmy Johnson and what he stands for and what he offers, and it's not hard to see why. And the NFL world, especially from a broadcasting side, is better off for having Jimmy Johnson in it. Having said that, Father Time comes for us all, and if you've watched Fox NFL Sunday over the last few years, you can definitely tell that Jimmy Johnson has lost a step or two, to the point where it can be downright painful to watch him at times. I don't blame the guy. He's 81 years old. He's definitely not the same man that he once was when it comes to forming coherent thoughts and being sharp and with it. And there are some rumblings that Super Bowl 59 was his last hurrah, and that he will be walking away from broadcasting after the season. Nothing is confirmed, but when Johnson was asked about whether or not this game was goodbye, he said that he's taking it one day at a time. Plus, when the end of the broadcast happened and Kurt Menefee said, "See you next year," Johnson did not utter those words. There is a very real chance that Super Bowl 59 was the last time that we've seen Johnson in a full-time role with Fox, and that this game was his well-deserved send-off after nearly 30 years of service with the network. So with Fox recognizing this possibility, they decided before the game to pay tribute to Jimmy Johnson, devoting an entire segment to his legacy as a broadcaster and as a coach, and how he became one of the best in the world. And on paper, I've got no problem with this whatsoever. Networks honoring their employees that have been there for a while and have touched the lives of so many people is nothing new, and it's something that should be done when appropriate. And seeing as this could be Johnson's last time behind a mic, it was more than appropriate here. Heck, I grew up watching Jimmy Johnson every Sunday, and even though it definitely feels like it's time to hang it up, his absence will be felt whenever that time comes. So on paper, a segment about Jimmy Johnson's contributions in football and a look back on his life is something that I've got no problem with. Except, there's just one small problem. There's one teeny tiny problem that we need to talk about that made this go from a nice, touching segment to one of the most head-scratching things I've seen and one of the worst parts of the Fox broadcast. Oh yeah, the entire thing was done with AI. That's right. You would think that this look back on Jimmy Johnson's life would be Jimmy narrating his accomplishments with photos and videos in the background describing the accomplishments, or people talking about how Jimmy Johnson touched their lives and made an impact, or something along those lines. You know, like a normal tribute. But nope, Fox decided that the Jimmy Johnson tribute should not be done just with AI, but some of the most uncanny valley artificial intelligence that you'll ever see, where the faces look mismatched, the graphics look bizarre at times, and the mouths barely moved. They did an entire tribute to Jimmy Johnson via computer, where there was no effort put in from actual humans, almost like putting in a prompt in Bing's image creator or ChatGPT, or one of those systems. And you might be thinking, oh, come on. You're going to devote an entire video to Fox doing an AI segment just to talk about how ugly it was? Well, no. Because if this was just really ugly and uncanny valley territory, as much as I would hate on it and talk about how much it stinks, I wouldn't be giving it too much attention in the grand scheme of things. However, I have to bring this up because this segment was downright dangerous. Because I kid you not, the AI segment on Jimmy Johnson's tribute got facts wrong. The images shown were not even close to historically accurate, to the point where I genuinely could not believe what I was watching. There are people who are watching this segment thinking that's how it actually went down and how it looked like, and it wasn't even close. Whether it was a color being off, or entire logos being off, and entire stadium designs being off, the Jimmy Johnson AI segment was ridiculously inaccurate that it shows the perils and the dangers of relying solely on AI. And I couldn't believe this made it through the chain of command and made it to one of the most coveted spots of the pregame show without someone touching up on it or having many questions and red flags and concerns about it. So, with that in mind, let's break down whatever the heck Fox was thinking here and break down everything wrong with this segment from a historical standpoint. Before we do that, make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video or live stream that we post on the channel. We post every single day about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, and we've got so many videos coming up this offseason, and every bit of support and every subscriber helps as we try and get closer and closer to 70,000 subs. So I would really appreciate hitting that like button and subscribing down below. Thanks in advance, and with that in mind, let's dive right in. Jimmy Johnson's career started for one season in 1965 at Louisiana Tech, or Louisiana Polytechnic Institute as it was called back then. And why on earth is that logo green? Seriously, why is the logo for Louisiana Tech green? They have never been green in their life. They've been red, white, and blue for as long as I can remember. Here's their media guide from the 1965 season, and I'm fairly confident there's no green there. Did they get the colors mixed up with Tulane or something? That logo is most definitely not blue. This is like doing a tribute video to Steve Spurrier, and the Florida logo is red. Also, Johnson only coached 1 year at Louisiana Tech, which was that 1965 season. The Bulldogs played 8 games that year, yet none of those games were against Texas. The scoreboard says they played Texas. They did not play Texas. Oddly enough, though, Texas did play Tulane to open up the 1965 season, and wait a second, holy cow. Did Fox confuse Tulane with Louisiana Tech? Seriously, did Fox confuse the two schools in Louisiana with each other? I'm not even kidding. Tulane played Texas that year and wore green. Louisiana Tech does not wear green and did not play Texas. I'm genuinely convinced someone at Fox thought that Jimmy Johnson began his career at Tulane and not Louisiana Tech, because I cannot explain this error, showing a logo that did not exist and a team that did not exist. Good start, guys. We then get a montage of every school that Johnson was an assistant coach at, including Picayune Memorial High School. Once again, fairly confident that this was not their logo in 1966, seeing as that's the current P that Purdue uses, and has used since 2012. So if Purdue copied a design created roughly half a century before that, I'd be genuinely stunned. I don't know what their logo was in 1966, we're talking about the high school here, but I'm willing to bet my life savings that it was most definitely not that. Again, historically inaccurate. We then see Johnson with Iowa State, and once again, not even close to their logo. Fairly confident their logo wasn't all red like that. This was the logo of Iowa State at the time that Jimmy Johnson was coaching there. The flag was yellow and had ISU written inside it. The feet and the beak were yellow. Yet, for some reason, this is just entirely in red. It's one color. The AI generator, whatever tool they used here, just forgot to color it in. Basic stuff like that. And it's not like this was their logo at midfield, seeing as Iowa State had no midfield logo in 1968 or 1969 from all the footage I've watched. So you can't say this is the historically accurate version of their logo, because it's not. And just to double confirm what every logo database has, this was one of their logos used for homecoming in 1969, and the beak is clearly yellow. There is not a single version of the logo that I could find that was all red like what Fox showed here. So far, This segment has given us nothing but historically inaccurate logos and depictions of teams. Feels good for a tribute. Also, I have to love how during this montage of all the schools that Jimmy Johnson worked at, we go straight from Iowa State to Arkansas. Why on earth we skipped over Oklahoma, I have no idea. He coached 3 years there from 1970 to 72 on the defensive line, and he won a couple of Sugar Bowls and finished inside the top 2 a couple of times there. Pretty big thing to omit if I do say so myself. You couldn't just put the Oklahoma logo in there? Did the AI system you used run out of credits or something, and you didn't want to have to pay for more? It's not like you had to change the script or anything, and it's not like this was cut for time. All you had to do was show Johnson walking across the field and just put something in between his time at Iowa State and his time at Arkansas. It was just one logo you had to put in. Skipping his Oklahoma stint just feels incredibly weird and feels like a lack of due diligence on Fox's part, which is something that will be all too common throughout this, in case you haven't been able to figure out. Because eventually, we get to Johnson's head coaching stint with Miami Hurricanes. And oh my god, my eyes. Yeah, everything about this is wrong. AI still has a long way to go, because it cannot do letters whatsoever. The N on the Orange Bowl looks like the freaking pi symbol. I forgot that time during the 1980s that the stadium went from the Orange Bowl to the R3.14159 Bowl. You can see how bad the lettering looks here in this still shot with how close the 2 legs of the N are to each other. Compare that with a side-by-side of the bottom of what the scoreboard looked like its final days, with actual lettering that wasn't created by AI, and it's like night and day. There's no random triangle in the A. There's no bizarre spacing between the O and the R. The N doesn't even look like an N, as there's no diagonal going between it. It just looks like 2 L's, lowercase L's. It looks all off. You can see that, right? It looks all off. Also, speaking of historically accurate, the scoreboard itself isn't even close to historically accurate. That wasn't the scoreboard when Jimmy Johnson was coaching there. This was the scoreboard when Jimmy was there. Very different looking. It's like doing a segment on the greatness of Fred Taylor with the Jacksonville Jaguars and showing him in the stadium with the current video board. It's not true. And to show how lazy this was, even if this was the right layout of the scoreboard for some reason and was way ahead of its time, the sponsors aren't even close to accurate. They just used the Orange Bowl sponsors at the time the stadium got demolished. Coca-Cola was not using that brand campaign in the 1980s. The Comcast logo, that wasn't even close. That was this thing, which looks way more 80s than that logo clearly designed in the 2000s. You see what I mean with this, right? Even when they showed Jimmy Johnson winning the national championship and winning the Natty, which you can tell by looking at the scoreboard that says 20-14, that wasn't what the stadium looked like during that. Just use the Orange Bowl field and make it accurate. The Orange Bowl, during that championship, wasn't plastered with Miami logos galore. Nothing about the images here is right, and it begs the question why you even used AI in the first place if you couldn't tell an accurate story. We then get to Johnson's tenure with the Dallas Cowboys. And sure enough, when the Cowboys won Super Bowl 27, you guessed it, that's not what the Rose Bowl looked like. You might notice a lack of video boards at the Rose Bowl during this segment, even though they were very clearly there, and all you had to do was watch the first 10 seconds of the Michael Jackson halftime show to realize that. The Rose Bowl sign, number 1, was not there during the game, and number 2 is just floating in midair. How does this work? What are the physics behind this? Why is this AI system so freaking bad at stadium renderings? How is this so hard? Besides the floating sign and the missing video boards, the sponsors for the scoreboard, you guessed it, not even close to correct. It really should be nighttime if a scoreboard says 52:17 with the clock at 0. But honestly, that's such a minor nitpick in the grand scheme of things that I'll give it a pass for now. The sponsors for this game were, apparently, 2 competing companies, Delta and Alaska Airlines. Even if that was true, which it's not, but even if it was, That wasn't even the Alaska Airlines logo back in 1993 when the game was played. They retired that logo in 1972. This was the logo for Alaska Airlines in 1993, so you're not just wrong, you're double wrong. The sponsors for one scoreboard were Bank of America and Coca-Cola. You can make it out on this photo of Leon Light in the end zone. The sponsors for the other scoreboard were Honda and HealthNet. You went 0 for 4 on the sponsors because you used a scoreboard that didn't exist and a logo that didn't exist. And you can't even say, well, maybe they couldn't do it because of competing companies. You used the Comcast logo owned by NBC Universal for the Orange Bowl, so I don't want to hear that excuse whatsoever. Also, that's not even close to what the press box looked like at the Rose Bowl for that game, as you're missing a ton of details with the logos, because the AI system cannot do details properly in the slightest bit. The design of the press box is all off. The parallelograms are way too small. They're going completely different directions, and they're missing a crap ton of logos. So the Rose Bowl rendering, not even close. But every complaint I had about how inaccurate this AI system was, every single complaint, it pales in comparison to his final coaching stint with the Miami Dolphins, because we saved the best for last. I'm not even gonna say anything. I'm not even gonna freaking say anything. Just take a gander at this. We have Jimmy Johnson coaching in a post-renovated Hard Rock Stadium with the current Dolphins font and the 90s Dolphins logo. Just a complete mismatch and butchering that I can't even begin to describe. It's as if everything was wrong about this. This is genuinely embarrassing, to the point where even if you might have missed some of the other details before, there is no way if you watch this segment live that you missed this one. That's how glaringly obvious it was. They were just mixing and matching random logos and schemes and whatnot, and none of them were correct. It's almost as if maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't be solely relying on AI for stuff like this, seeing as just about every single segment had some sort of glaring artistic mistake. What stinks about this, aside from the fact that it takes away from Jimmy Johnson and his legacy, and what should have been a great moment to honor him, is the fact that Fox seems to have no regard for the history of the game when they do stuff like this and completely change details and erase the past. We saw what happened during the divisional round between the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions, when they used two logos to illustrate the 1991 NFC Championship played between those two franchises, and used two logos that were very clearly not the logos back then. Fox has shown that they pay no attention to detail whatsoever. And if you're gonna do that, that's your prerogative, I guess. I mean, you have Carissa Thompson doing your reports, and she admitted to making up stuff, so we know where you stand on that. Just don't try and change history while doing so, because what should have been an effort to honor Jimmy Johnson turned into an attempt at changing the history of the sport, from the subtle to the not so subtle. There's artistic license and creativity, and then there's whatever the heck this is. You knew that Jimmy Johnson coached under that Dolphins logo, so you changed that, but you didn't bother to change the font. You knew that Jimmy Johnson coached at Iowa State, so you used their old logo, but you didn't bother to actually use the full logo. You see the problem here. By using AI, you are changing history. You are changing facts. And this segment, if anything, was not a tribute to Jimmy Johnson. That's not what I got out of this. What I got out of this was that this was a segment about the dangers of AI and how it should be used strictly as a tool, and not as the only tool and the only source of art. If you had an actual human create this segment, these mistakes don't happen. I guarantee you that these mistakes don't happen. From the Orange Bowl pie sign to the Dolphins mismatched logos to the scoreboard at the Rose Bowl, these mistakes don't happen at all. For Fox to feel comfortable airing this AI crap in front of presumably 70 million people at the time is alarming. And I really hope it's not a sign of things to come. I really hope not. Jimmy Johnson deserved better. Plain and simple, Jimmy Johnson deserved better. He deserved an actual human to create this tribute for him. We, the viewing audience, also deserve better. We deserved a historically accurate segment. And I don't think that's too much to ask for a segment to be factually correct. Because if this truly is it for Jimmy Johnson, at least he's getting out, before the computers take over everything that Fox does. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.